Hello, my name is Richard Lemay, and today with my group members that are Johnny Donoso and Carlos Aguila, we're going to explain a paper called Exploring Principles of User-Centered Agile Software Development. The context. In the last decade, software development has been characterized by two major approaches: agile software development and hybrid development models. The agile software development aims to achieve increased velocity and flexibility during the development process, and user-centered design, which places the goals and needs of the system and users at the center of the software development in order to deliver software with appropriate usability. The hybrid development models, we're going to refer this as user-centered agile software development, abbreviated as UCASD, and this model proposes to combine the metrics of both approaches in order to design software that is both useful and usable. To start, the objective of this paper was to capture the current state of the art in UCSD approaches and to derive generic principles from these approaches. Specifically, we investigated the question, which principles constitute a user-centered agile software development approach? The method of this paper was done by a systematic review of the literature of UCASD, and the identified works were analyzed using a coding scheme that differentiates four levels of UCASD: the process, the practices, the people social, and the technology dimensions. Then, the result of this paper was that they identified and analyzed 83 relevant publications, giving a result of a comprehensive coding system and 5 principles for UCASD. The first one was a separate product discovery and product creation. The second one was an iterative and incremental design and development. The third was the parallel interwoven creation tracks. The fourth was a continuous stakeholder involvement. And the fifth and final, the artifact mediated communication. And the conclusion the conclusion of this paper is that contributed to the software development body of knowledge by, number one, providing a broad overview of existing works in the area of UCASD. The number two is deriving an analysis framework for groups in this area, going beyond former classification. And lastly, the identifying generic principles of UCASD and associating them with specific practices and processes. And in the introduction of this paper, tried to answer the question of how to meet the challenges of organizing software development activities that has concerned since 1970s. This has been answered by an understanding of development activities as a dynamic process characterized by iterative cycles and the active involvement of all stakeholders. The agile software development responds to unpredictable changes by relying on people and their creativity rather than on processes, limiting software development strictly to activities that add business value for the customers. These agile methods focus on the question of how useful software can be developed, with customer value being understood as primarily driven by proving an appropriate functional scope. They do not necessarily focus on developing software that is considered usable. Instead, user-centered design, or UCD, ensures that the goals and needs of the system end user is the focus of the product development. In these days, the need to deliver business value to the customer in a rapidly and changing environment while taking the needs of end user into account are really important, and that's why the integration of USD and ASD seems to be a promising and has received increasing attention in the recent years. The literatures that the paper reviewed suffer from several shortcomings, being number one, existing reviews lack a comprehensive coverage of the different dimensions of UCASD. They mainly focus on the actual software development practices to be used and rarely describe further dimensions. Number two, the findings have been insufficiently abstracted and systematized, impeding a generalization of the results and applicability in a specific context. Number three is from a model of methodological point of view, the conducted literature reviews on UCASD lack clear quality criteria for paper selection and need to be complemented by current findings. In order to address these research gaps, the paper tries to investigate the question: which principles constitute a user-centered agile software development approach? They derive a set of grounded principles for UCASD from the literature. Then the paper had a section called Foundations, where they tried to summarize the existing literature reviews. There were three main literature reviews, and the first one was from Sohaib and Khan. They aimed to identify tensions felt between UCD and ASD. The most important question for them are: software development should focus on the customer or on the end user of the software. Developers' aim should be to create useful or usable software, and lastly, the unit testing or usability testing is more important. They suggested an integrated approach bringing the gap between the two fields. The approach focuses on the recommendation to use specific practices. Then there goes the next one. Da Silva et al. Explicitly addresses their work as a systematic literature review and followed the research method described by Kitchenham to cover existing literature on the integration of UCD and ASD as completely as possible. This resulted in the analysis of 58 articles, where they provide extensive descriptive statistics on various aspects on the retrieved publication. They argued that the most significant principles for integration USD and ASD are a little design up front. He proposed a high-level integrated framework with parallel design and development activities. And the last researchers were Barksdale and McCrickard, and they wanted to point out an insufficiently covered area of research. The main contribution of the review lies in the organization of extant research efforts concerning the integration of UCD and ASD along 5 dimensions. Number 1, the focus on practices. Number 2, the process itself. Number 3, the technological means to support software development. Number 4, the people involved in the process. And lastly, the social aspects involved in the process. Can you go forward? The gap analysis of existing literature's reviews. There are 3 major shortcomings told by the paper we need to read. Then the first one was that none of the existing reviews broadly cover UCASD across its different dimensions. The second shortcoming was the existing reviews do not sufficiently abstract and generalize their results. And the third shortcoming was, while each review provided summarized information and included primary articles, none of them included a quality assessment of the encompassed primary series as Kitchenham recommends.
Okay, so what we have here is the research method itself and its goals, which explain the process, are that the systematic literature review to analyze thousands of quality documents in order to achieve a generalized process for a user-centered agile software development. So what this sentence is trying to say is that you need to search through a pile of documents, through a pile of quality documents, to actually end up with every dimension of the analysis, and to actually get a full in-depth analysis of the user-centered agile software development in order to generalize it for it to be explained in every case scenario. Okay, so for this analysis, they use 3 databases: ProQuest, ScienceDirect, and ABSCCO host. Querying each databases for the documents, and in each document actually get the quality inside the document and the content inside the document. So how they do that? They use certain guidelines that act as a railroad for this investigation. The first one was to use a search strategy. This means that they actually set the goal for this investigation to be focusing on only user-centered development and agile software development. So having that in mind, they came down to the second guideline, which is the selection criteria and procedures. Okay, we are using only user-centered development and agile software development products, but we need a selection criteria for them to actually select the important ones. And after that, after you came out with the important ones, you need to select the attribute that equality to the research and gives meaningful purpose for this research. What this is trying to say is that for each document that we grab, we need to extract the process, the practices, the people and social aspects, and the technology attributes. Okay, research method. On the following scheme, we can see the control flow of the automated search methodology used in this paper. Okay, so in stage 1, we have a pool of relevant publication paper, documents, etc. After filtering, after querying them, extracting only the agile software development ones that had ideas and the ones that had user-centered developed ideas, we end up with, give or take, 1,034 publications. After that, we filter based on the titles and the abstracts, those who actually matter, those who actually address the case of this domain. And after that, we obtain the primary papers and exclude publication based on the content itself. And we go back and forth in this process about 9 times, about more than 9 times, about the times that it's necessary, actually. Ending up with 148 documents, eliminating duplicates and everything. And after that, after ending up with the 148 documents, quality assessment code publication. What does this mean? Is that we're trying to find documents, papers, that actually possess process definition, practice definition, people and social aspect definition, and technological definitions according to this topic. And after that, we end up with 83 documents, publications, etc. One thing to point out here is that the filtering wasn't arbitrary. The filtering was made by people who already made a automatic, which is Diva, and Diva did it for agile software development, and for the user-centered develop, they use a table of keywords that was actually used in exploratory search, which is a hand-by-hand search.
After the paper selection process, these were processed by the MaxQDA data analysis software, which finally, through the search for keywords on the paper, gave us the following results. When the first result is the figure 3, when we analyzing the result set, it became apparent that the topic gained momentum in 2007, and since then, a constantly high number of relevant articles have been published every year. Um, Following with the results, the following table presents the results of the categorization of the 83 papers chosen according to the principles saw in the main search for papers. The analysis revealed that both process and practice integration aspects are strongly represented in the final sample, while people and social and technology integration aspects were discussed in less papers. Um, the next result is a synthesized view of the coding system. A key objective of the literature review was the synthesis of evidence found in extant literature in order to derive principles by applying a coding system to each article's content, and this was the result. Now we see the principal tokens in the papers of process, in the paper of practice, and in the paper of people and technology. And it is through this coding system that the principle for this UKSD development will be derived. When doing an analysis of the documents in points like process and practice, the necessary evidence was found to create valid principles that serve under any environment. But as for people social, the necessary information was not found to create adequate principles. Since the practice described in the papers, they were very different and both brought results. Or simply there was no enough information or research in the subject as in the case of technology. Having said that, I will go on to explain the five principles described in the UKSD development paper. Um, First of all, these principles are divided into branches, such as the process that must be done when developing the product and the practice that are required to achieve a better product. The first is the process principles, and the first principle is separate product discovery and product creation. User-centric agile software development should be based on separate product discovery and creation phases. Achieved from an upfront design to upfront analysis concept is identified as primary. In order to deliver a product that is valuable to the customer and end user, in that it is both usable and useful. Product discovery and product creation should be separated in UKSD. In addition to making room for enough initial design activities, like a prerequisite for the delivery of a usable product with a consistent concept of interaction with the user, allows to mitigate agile deficiencies with respect to product discovery, promoting the delivery of a usable product. The next principle is iterative and incremental design and development. Um, Both agile software development and user-centered development promote an iterative and incremental approach to software development. This allows you to use the feedback collected in previous iterations to enhance the emerging product and in future iterations. The union of both areas is the best for UKSD. Developing software in an iterative manner creates short feedback cycles, while an incremental development in vertical slices allows for evaluating working product increments. Additionally, adapting the product scope after each iteration embraces change and is a prerequisite to deliver valuable software. The next principle is parallel interwoven creation tracks. Designs and development activities as part of the product creation phase are often described as parallel tracks. The concept of designing one sprint ahead is commonly found in existing UKSD approach and was mentioned in 17 publications in the review. This consists in scheduled activities for the design team to gather customer data and develop user interface specification for the next cycle, while the development team simultaneously implements specifications prepared in the previous cycle. It has to be keep in mind that an iteration concept designed for implementation and in upcoming iteration has to be finished prior to start of its development. Now will we see the practice conducted in a UKSD approach? Now we can see the principle of practice. Practice conducted in a UKSD approach has been classified along two holistic principles. The first one is the principle 4. The principle 4, stakeholders should be actively involved in user-centered agile approach early on and should remain involved through the entire development process to collect input and feedback. Stakeholders' continue involvement in the design and development process is one of the main commonalities of user-centered design and agile software development. Both emphasize the human aspect of software development, because in the majority of cases, the stakeholder represents the end user. And the last principle is artifact-mediated communication. Artifacts are central means of communication for agile and user-centered software development. While agile software development focuses on working prototypes, user-centered design provides different artifacts to document stakeholder needs and communicate design ideas. Is for this what in user-centered agile approach, tangible and up-to-date artifacts should be used to document and communicate product and design concepts, and should be accessible to all involved stakeholders. And now my colleague Richard will explain the conclusion.
In conclusion, this paper captures the current state of ASD and UCD integration and identifies generic principles that constitute as an integrated UC-ASD approach. This by doing a systematic review of existing literature, identifying 83 publications, and were analyzed along 4 dimensions, getting these results. The results for the people-social dimension were contradictory and therefore impeded generalization. The results for the technology dimension were thin and contained hardly any explicit recommendation. The results for the process dimension described integrated approaches combining the two fields, confirm earlier prescriptions, and discuss key challenges with regards to this dimension. The paper contributed in number 1, deriving a comprehensive coding system. Can you go forward? Okay. Deriving a comprehensive coding system which allows for a broader classification of existing works of UCASD, and also concluding that the current state of the art in UCASD has been depicted based on the derived coding system. Go forward. Thank you for your time.